Basically, Kum Len La Blanc Gemara, it's Motzei Shabbos Kodesh Parshat Tzap. The Gemara is having a discussion. The last thing we learned was about Sarah's Saita, about a Saita. What about her co-wife? She cannot marry the brother. What about the co-wife? And now, then from that, we've segued into an argument between Rabbi Yossi ben Kippur and the Chachamim. If a man divorces a wife, she marries somebody else, he cannot remarry her. He's over an aveda for remarrying her. And the pasuk says, and achrei ashutama, because she became, I guess, in a way, defiled. Now that she did anything wrong, she can't come back to her original husband. So we according to Rabbi Yossi ben Kippur, that's only if they actually had marital relations. If she was only engaged to another man, she could go back to her original husband. According to Chachamim, it makes no difference whether she was engaged or married. As soon as she got, it says in the pasuk, like a kisiya, went to another person, it's too late. That's kedushin. She cannot go back to her original husband. But the fact that the pasuk says utam, it's talking about something totally different. It's talking about a saita, someone who committed adultery while she was married. And we use the word tuma, which is the same word that we use by erva. So it comes along Rabbi Yehuda, and this is yesterday's Gemara, and he asked Rav Sheshes, okay, Reuven divorced his wife, she married somebody else, he took her back, but he shouldn't have, and then Reuven died. Okay, she obviously is not entitled to marry her and the brother-in-law and all that. What about her co-wife? Is her co-wife still considered, just because she is she has no ties anymore to her brother-in-law, and she therefore is considered the brother's wife, you're not allowed to marry her. What about the co-wife herself? How do we treat her? And we explained, according to Rabbi Yossi ben Kippur, he says that the word tuma is referring to a person who took his wife back. So of course, she's like any erva. Sorry, the co-wife also is forbidden, that both of them cannot marry the brother-in-law because they still consider the brother's wife without the mitzvah of yibum. Fine. My question is according to the rabbis. The rabbis say this pasuk is not referring to Satan. It's referring to something. Is not referring to somebody takes back his wife. It's referring to a Satan. So the question is, when the Rabbanan decided that this section of the pasuk is not talking anymore about the subject of that pasuk, did they completely remove it from that pasuk, or they're just saying it also has other connotations? But still, somebody takes his original wife back when he shouldn't have. She's still considered an erva, a tamei, and she can, and the co-wife is exempt. So we're up to now Chia bar Abba, who's going to ask a very similar question. Amar Chia bar Abba, this that you said before, Rabbi Yehuda asked, Rav Sheshes, Rabbi Yochanan asked a very similar question. But there was a discussion involved, and there's two ways of viewing that question. One way is as follows. He asked, somebody takes back his wife, who he divorced. She married somebody else, and then he takes her back. Mishnah says after she married somebody else, okay, what about Sarasa? She is considered she's tamei, she cannot marry her brother. What about her co-wife, Mao? Do we treat her completely like an erva, that the co-wife also is no longer involved in yibum or chalitza? Or do we say no? Co-wife has nothing to do with her, and the co-wife still has the mitzvah of yibum. She cannot marry anybody else. Rabbi said, Rabbi said, I don't understand. Why are you asking about the co-wife? What about the woman herself? The woman herself who was divorced and came back to her husband, she committed a sin, but she's not an erva. Maybe she just committed a sin, and maybe there is a mitzvah yibum. At least you should have chalitza. So he says as follows. Gufa, like a boiler, regarding herself, I have no question. And you know why? I'm going to make a logical conclusion. Her first husband, Reuven, that she was legally married to, then suddenly she became forbidden to. The Mutula Asura, she was permitted to live with that guy, and then she became forbidden because she married somebody else in between, and they came back. He's Ba'asala, with her brother-in-law, but she's not allowed to marry because it's her brother-in-law. You're not allowed to live with your sister-in-law. He's like Koshke, and surely that she has no mitzvah of Yibum. There's nothing to talk about. If she's forbidden to Reuven, surely she's forbidden to Shimon, who steps in the shoes of Reuven. My question is regarding Tsar Rosa, the co-wife. And what's the question? Me alim kal v'chayim. This kal v'chayim's logic so strong that therefore that she's forbidden, that the co-wife also gets dragged into it, and she has no mitzvah even whatsoever. I like. Well, the kal v'chayim is limited only to this divorced wife, but the co-wife, she's allowed to live with Shimon, so she has a full mitzvah yibum or chalitza. That's one version of the question. Rab Nachman by Yitzchak Masna Hachi. Rab Nachman Yitzchak has another version of the question as follows. Rabbi Yitzchak has a question. If somebody takes back his wife divorced after she married somebody else, what's the law regarding her? So the second version is Rabbi Yechon was asking about the woman herself. So what about asking the same question regarding the co-wife, what the law there is? So he says, I have no question, according to this version, there's no question that the tzara, the co-wife, she has the mitzvah of Yibum. What does she have to do with the woman who's divorced? My question is, my question is about the woman herself. What's the question? On the one hand, logic says that she's forbidden to her husband Reuben, surely she's forbidden to the brother-in-law. But or you can say that the mitzvah of marrying your brother-in-law overrides that particular logic. He goofing my me alim kavachayim mitzvah is strong enough that it prevents the mitzvah from taking place. I like the mitzvah of marrying your brother-in-law Yibum pushes away this logical kavachayim, and therefore she should live with her brother-in-law, at least get a chalitza. Amalei, he said to Nisuam, we actually learned this. We learned yesterday. We're repeating it now again. We learned Reuben was married to two women. One woman was kosher and one woman was not kosher. We'll soon see what that means. If Shimon has two options. Either he can give them a chalitza, which is tantamount to a divorce, but it's only like a rabbinical divorce, or he can marry her. So this is what the Brisa says. If he prefers to give a chalitza psula, we encourage you to give the chalitza to the woman who's puzzled anyway, and not to the one that's kosher. We'll soon see what that means, kosher and puzzled. But if you intend to marry, then marry better the one that is kosher. Now, what's going on here? My ksheda, my psula. What do you mean kosher? What do you mean puzzled? Ilay ksheda means kshela alma. Kosher means nothing to do with you. You're allowed to live with either woman. But kosher means that this woman can marry any Jew, including the kohen. She's not a divorcee. She's allowed to marry a kohen, and psula means that what? She's disqualified from marrying a kohen. For example, she's a divorcee, psula la'almo, she's a convert, let's say. Then kiva l'deichaz, as long as Shimon is allowed to marry either woman, what are we telling him to marry the kosher rather than the apostle? What's the difference? Just because this woman is a divorcee, she's not allowed to marry a kohen, why shouldn't Shimon marry her if he prefers to marry her? Then ma'inaf what's the difference, kosher apostle to him? What's the relevance? Elalab obviously means ksheda loy, someone that's kosher to the whole world, and kosher to him as well. And psula means psule, the first that's puzzled to him, kosher to other people, but not to the Shimon, not to the brother. Umayni, what's an example of that? What would be an example of that? An example of that be somebody who takes back his divorced wife. Uktani, and it says, it says here, if he is going to marry miyabim l'ksheda, marry the one that's kosher to you, which means what? I don't want you to marry this woman that was divorced. So it's clear from here, we see two things. We see, when it comes to marriage, we say, don't marry the woman herself. The one that was divorced, don't marry her. There's no yibum there. On the other hand, so that answers that part of the question. And the other hand, but the co-wife you should marry, which means you had another question, what's the law of the co-wife? Yes, the co-wife should get married. Clear. Said, well, no, you cannot bring any proof from here whatsoever. I could argue for argument's sake, maybe kshela alma. When it comes to maybe if we're talking about a case of a woman who's divorced, she should not marry a brother-in-law, and maybe the co-wife is forbidden to marry brother-in-law. We have no proof from here one way or another. Know what it means, kosher apostle? We're talking about a divorcee or a chalutza, someone who received chalutza before, or even a geirus. She cannot marry a kohen. So you have apostle, that's apostle, and a kosher, someone who could marry a kohen. So as far as getting married, he can marry either one, makes no difference. As far as chalitza, we're saying, you know what? We want you to give chalitza. We want you to give chalitza to the one that's possible. Why? What's the difference? Why give it to what's possible? So Gemara explains. The comedy asked the question, since he can marry either one, or he can give a chalitza to either one, meaning what's the difference to him? Which one he gives chalitza to? I'll tell you why. Because of Rabbi Yosef. What did Rabbi Yosef say? The famous ethical rule. Kan shana Rebbe. Rebbe teaches a very important lesson. If you have water there in your pit that you no longer need, you want to throw it out. Don't throw it away because you say, look, I don't need it. What do I care what happens to it? Maybe there's somebody out there who needs it. And therefore, don't spill out your water of your pit. Others need it. Here, you don't want to live with either woman. So you say to yourself, what do I care which one I give a chalitza to? But the point is you're ruining her life. because this woman, if she's already a person that cannot marry a kohen, fine. But if she could marry a kohen, and you're going to give a chalitza, you just prevented her from getting married to a kohen. And it's not fair. What does it bother you if she marries a kohen? So if you're pouring out your water and somebody else can benefit from it, don't pour it out. If you are going to give a chalitza, don't give it to the woman that could currently marry a kohen, because you're going to ruin her life. Better give it to someone who anyway cannot marry a kohen, so you're not in any way hurting her. So no proof either way. Toshma Kamini, I bring you proof another price. Again, we had this yesterday. If somebody takes back his divorced wife, Mishnah says after she married somebody else, she and her co-wife gets chalitza. So what does he clear from here? Now, first, it answers both. She still has yibum. Okay, she cannot marry because she lives in similar Reuven, but at least chalitza. And the co-wife also is chalitza. That's what it sounds like from here. So before we go any further, what's the question? But at least the co-wife also is bound by yibum. What's the question? Since when you only give chalitza or yibum to one of the women? It says in the pasuk, "Bayis echad," build one house, not two houses. And the Brayza says you should give her and the co-wife a chalitza. Unheard of. Ella ema, you have to edit the Brayza and say oihi oitzaros. It's either she or the tzara. One of them you have to give chalitza to. More answers back. So that's your proof. The moment you start editing to the Brayza, I'm going to continue editing it. And this is how I'm going to edit it. So therefore, you have no answer to either of our questions. The lav tiruj you edited it. This I should learn. He chayletzes rasa. That what? That he chayletzes. That if you're dealing directly with a woman who's divorced, give her a chalitza. But sarasa, when it comes to the co-wife, oy chayletzes, oy misyabemes. You can give her either one. So it could be the co-wife is bound totally by yibum, and so she's also bound by yibum. But you cannot marry her because she lived in sin with your brother, so you cannot be any better than your brother. But give her chalitza. So we haven't resolved our question. A new Gemara. So what we're discussing the Gemara right now on the last page until the Mishnah is that in our Mishnah, in the first Mishnah, we said that you're not allowed to marry your brother's wife. But then the Torah turned into a mitzvah. If he dies childless, you have a mitzvah of evil. But if there's another reason why you cannot marry her, because she's an erva, then the mitzvah of evil does not come into effect. You're not allowed to marry her. And we extended it to the co-wife and to the co-wife for the word litzra. Now we're talking about where she's not allowed to live with her husband, but not because of error, other issues. The last one we had was Saita. Now we'll bring up a few more. What about a girl who's a mamenes? A mamenes is a young girl who got married. If her father marries her off, even when she's a day old, she's married from the Torah. However, if the brothers married her off, the father's no longer alive, the brothers married her off, the sister, the mother, she is only married with Rabbah. The father, even if he's alive, if he married her off and then she got divorced, the father loses all of his rights over his daughter. If she gets married a second time, it is only midrabanan, which means that she can, at the age of 12, say, I'm not interested. It's called miyun. She walks out, and it's as if they were never married. As if they were married, and she can marry a kohen. We'll see later all that. So, comes along Shmuel and says as follows. What about Soras Mam Enes? What about if, let's say, Reuven and Shimon's daughter married Reuven. Shimon's daughter is under 12, and in the case where she was married before, this is a second marriage. And there's a co-wife to Reuven. And then Shimon's daughter, let's say, walks out of the marriage. So therefore, there's only one woman left, and that is the co-wife of Reuven. If Reuven dies, Shimon marries her. So the question is as follows. Tzaras mam ens. The tzara of what do you call it? The Beis Shammai says later on that a girl can only be memayin to walk away to her original husband. The moment her original husband dies, she's stuck now. As if she's married, she has to go ahead with the brother-in-law. And Beis Hillel says no, that she can be memayin not only while Reuven's alive, even after Reuven died, she still has the right to be memayin as long as she's not 12 years old. She can walk out as if she was never married in the first place. She can walk out of the yibum. She can walk out of everything. Then we have an argument around Shmuel. Okay, if she walks out of the yibum, then if she walks out of the yibum, then we'll treat it, since Reuven died already, we're going to treat her as if it's Reuven's wife, midrabanan, and Shimon can no longer marry her because she is Reuven's wife and there's no mitzvah yibum. Why is there no mitzvah yibum? Because really she's not Reuven's wife. So there's no mitzvah yibum, but because she lived with Reuven until Reuven died, it looks like she's Reuven's wife, and therefore Shimon could not marry. So Rabbi Shmuel, what about the other brothers? Can they marry her or not? Rav says no, when Shmuel says yes. So this is the case now. Sarah's Mamenes, so the Shimon's daughter was married to Reuben. She did not object until after Reuben died. So the question is, what is the status of the co-wife? So Shmuel says, Asura, it is forbidden. She is forbidden. So wants to know to who? Lema. She's forbidden to the other brothers. Doesn't make sense. She's the co-wife of the niece should be forbidden. Doesn't make sense because even the niece herself is permitted to all the other brothers. If she walks out of the marriage of Reuben and Shimon, that she was never married, then all the other brothers can marry her, according to Shmuel. So if the original girl who walked out can marry the other brothers, the co-wife shouldn't? That doesn't make sense. To the brothers, the girl herself can marry the other one. Shmuel holds. If she walked out, let's say one of the brothers of Shimon, she's totally permitted to the other brothers. So you can tell me that the co-wife cannot marry? It doesn't make sense. We're talking about the Shimon himself. Now what? That it says that this girl, after Reuben died, she decided to object. Then, because of Shimon's daughter, and she undid the marriage, but the co-wife is too late. The co-wife cannot. She's considered the co-wife of the daughter of Shimon, and therefore she cannot marry Shimon. Now the question is why? Let's see the logic. First of all, is the shaylach. According to Shmuel, why is it that the girl herself, that young girl, can marry the other uncles? Why? Because love the B'maisa. They did nothing with her. They had nothing to do with her, and she undid the entire marriage and unraveled. She was never married really to Reuben. So, or to Shimon, obviously not to Shimon because it's her father, but not to Reuben, and therefore all the brothers can marry her. Fine. She was never the brother's wife. So Taranami loved the Maisa, even though we're talking about Shimon, the co-wife of this little girl did nothing. So why can't she marry Shimon if Shimon's daughter undoes the marriage?
Where's the exact place, please?
Can someone tell him?
12.
Something. I'm following in the Gemara. I'm not reading.
Does anybody have an art scroll? You can tell them.
12A2.
Yeah,
Second column.
I've got 12A2, yeah.
12A2, second column. That's where I'm.
Yeah, I see. Okay.
The Gemara answers, you know why? Gzeida, we are worried. We're worried that any erva is if the co-wife, any erva, if she says after Reuben dies, she says no, then let's for example, she's a sister of Shimon's wife, and she says, and you know, Shimon and Reuben married two sisters, and then Reuben died, and after Reuben died, the one who was married to Reuben said, I unravel the marriage. So the co-wife cannot marry Shimon. Now, why not? Because this girl might have been the daughter of Shimon. And when it comes to the daughter of Shimon, even though she was young and she unraveled the marriage, if she hung around till after Reuben died, the co-wife is forbidden. So therefore, in all cases of error, the co-wife is forbidden, even though she walks out, undoes the marriage, as if they were never married. And the Gemara will hone in that in a minute. Says the Gemara, we are worried. The reason why we made the decree that all ervas, the co-wife is forbidden, even though she walked out of the marriage and did it, because in the case of a daughter, the co-wife of the daughter is definitely forbidden, even though the daughter undid the whole marriage after Reuben died. It doesn't matter. Says the Gemara, why not? I say, why should that be forbidden? If she undoes the entire marriage as if she was never married, then she's not a co-wife of anybody. Why can't she marry Shimon? But now, in fact, we learned in our Mishnah, the Kulan, all the cases we had in our Mishnah, daughter, mother, sister, all these cases, if the person, the erva, the woman who was the erva, died before Reuben died, or they walked out of the marriage, and right now the Gemara thinks there's no difference if she walked out of the marriage before Reuben died or after Reuben died. The theory is the same, that it does undoes entire marriage. Yeah, the din is that Torah saying mutaris, that the co-wives are not permitted because when Reuben died, they weren't the co-wife. Says the Gemara, let's understand the Mishnah. The meaning of man, who did it in mind? If we're talking about while the husband's still alive and she walked out of the marriage, that's what our Mishnah is talking about, only that window while the husband's alive. Isn't that the same thing as Gerusha? One example of the Mishnah is if she divorced. If she divorced before Reuben died, then the other woman is no longer the co-wife of an erva. So Miyun and Gerusha is really the same thing. She's walking out of the marriage. So obviously what the Mishnah means, Miyun, it means the husband died, and then afterwards she decided to marry. To the brother-in-law. When do we say that if she walks out, then the co-wife is not a problem? She still has mitzvah yibum. If she walked out before Reuven died, so at the moment when Reuven died, when the mitzvah yibum begins, there was only one woman involved in the marriage, and the other girl was not there. Betray gav negedish. And so Gemara says, and that's the only time we say that's all right. If she waited until after Reuven died, too late. She's like a married woman, and she's an erva, and therefore the co-wife is exempt as well. At least with the Rabban, as Gemara will explain in a minute. So why do you have to say grusha and mean? Because today gav and grusha, two kinds of divorce. There's a regular divorce, which is mahater, and then there's mean, which is only with the Rabban. Says Gemara, let's understand the logic. Umayshna, in logic, what's the difference? Kimiyan of a baal, if she says to Reuven, while Reuven's alive, I'm not interested in this marriage. I'm 11 and a half years old. I'm getting out. And she uproots the entire marriage. No, and let's say Reuven died, and afterwards she does the same thing. She says, look, I'm 11 and a half. I want to get out. It undoes the entire marriage. So what's the difference if she did it while Reuven was alive or after Reuven died? Even though she's saying no to the brother-in-law, but what is she really doing? The brother-in-law is only stepping in the shoes of Reuven. She's completely undoing an entire marriage. Says the Gemara, when you base on it out about 15 lines to the bottom. The Gemara says we're talking about a miyun if the girl undoes the marriage and she's related to the brother-in-law. Well, no, what's the status of the co-wife? So we said the co-wife is also forbidden because we extended from the daughter, the tzar of the daughter, and we're asking, and what's the logic in that? If she is Memayin, even though she's the daughter of Shimon, if she's Memayin after Reuven died, she undid the whole marriage, so she wasn't involved as if she was never married to Reuven, and the co-wife therefore should be able to marry Shimon, should marry Shimon, Yibum. So what answer explain to you the logic. Rabbi Yecheskel said, the Tanya Rabbi Yecheskel, the girl says no while her husband is still alive, muteres la'aviv, she's allowed to marry her husband's father, her ex-father-in-law, because as if she was never married to Reuben, so therefore it's not a father. But the Yavam, if she waited till Reuben died, and now she goes to the brother and says, I'm undoing the entire marriage as if I was never married to Reuben, and I want to marry your father, Asura love it, she's forbidden. What's the difference? Alma, what is he clear from here? Mishas nefila nidikaglosa. When Reuven died, she was still married to. She was still involved in the relationship, and then Reuven died. So at that moment, she looked like the daughter-in-law of Reuven's father. So as far as appearances are concerned, or overtly, she looked like she was a married woman. So with the Rabbanan, we say, you know what? We're going to treat her like a married woman. And even though she unravels it afterwards, because it looks like she's a married woman, therefore she cannot marry her father-in-law, and therefore the Tzara also cannot marry Shimon, because even though technically she's no longer Reuven's wife if she undoes it, but because she didn't do it till after Reuven died, it looks like her relation with Reuven was solid, and they were married. It's only afterwards it looks like she was the Tsar of the daughter, and therefore that's the logic. Now the Gemara continues. We're talking about now the tzaras of people who are not an erva, but there's no mitzvah of yibum there. What's the status of the tzara? So Rabasi said, what about tzaras island? A woman that is barren and does not have the signs of a woman. She's flat-chested. She doesn't, other issues there, that she'll never have kids. And the whole mitzvah of yibum is asher tailored to carry on the legacy of the deceased brother. So Ravasi says that not only the islands, since there's no mitzvah even by the islands, so as far as the islands is concerned, she's not allowed to live with the brother-in-law because Shimon, let's say, because it's Reuben's wife. So she's now an erba of Karis. So the tzara, the co-wife, also has no mitzvah of yibum. Ravasi, tzaras islands, asura, the tzara of an island is forbidden to live with the brothers. There's no mitzvah of yimaro. How do I know? It says, I should tell the Pchoy will give birth. Prat the islands, exceptions the islands, she'ena yeled will give birth. So therefore, the tzara also it goes back. It's like an erva. But which one is this? None of the ones in the Mishnah was talking about a mother, sister, daughter. The erva is the fact that's your brother's wife. And if you have no mitzvah of yibum in your brother's wife, that itself is an erva. And so therefore, the co-wife is forbidden to marry the brother-in-law. So you want to ask a question. Let's say we have three brothers, Reuven, Shimon, Levi. Were married, three individual women, unrelated. Reuven, let's say, died. So now Reuven died. Reuven's wife is now connected to either Shimon or Levi. But what happened was, we learn in the Gemara, every Yevama, as soon as the husband dies, if it's childless, they have a thing called zikah. They're tied together. They're tied to their brother-in-law. They're tied to their brother-in-law. But that's called zikah. If one of the husbands, now the only way that you could go ahead and have and cement that relationship with your sister-in-law is through the biblical way of marrying, through Bia. But what happens if one of the brothers gave her a ring, kedusha, like you do with a normal wife? Then with the Rabbanon, she's connected to that brother, but not Mahatayra. How old discussion about what happens if one of the other brothers jump in and has marital relations with her? What happens then? So now, so if the Reuben, Shimon, Levi, Reuben died, Shimon went ahead and proposed, gave her a ring, but didn't marry her yet. So whose wife? Mahatayra, she's still Reuben's wife. Mahatayra, nothing happened yet. But with the Rabbanon, she's already Shimon's, connected to Shimon. And the problem is, Shimon then died, and now you have Levi. He has two women now that he has to take care of. The problem is that if Reuben's wife would have totally married Shimon, then Shimon, forget Reuben. Reuben's out of the picture. It'd be Shimon who has two wives. And the din is you only give one of them either Yibum or Chalitza, because Bayis Echad Rachmana, only one woman. The problem here is that Shimon's second wife is really Reuben's wife. But with Rabbanan, she's Shimon's wife. And you can't give both of them Yibum or Chalitza. What do? If you give Chalitza or Yibum to Reuben's original wife, then Shimon's second wife wasn't taken care of. If you give Shimon's second wife Chalitza Yibum, then the other woman hasn't really been taken care of because she's Reuben's wife, but she's also partly Shimon. And you can't give both of them Chalitza because a husband, only one wife in a family, you can give Chalitza. You're stuck. What do? So we say here, you cannot marry either of them, you just give them Chalitza. Shenemar, because it says, and the reason why I give chalitza to one of them, you give Mahatayra, the other one is really one of them. So both of them you're giving Mahatayra, because Mahatayra that's from two separate husbands. But with the Rabbanon, we're not going to let you marry either of them because with the Rabbanon, there's sort of you have two wives connected to you from the same husband, and you're dealing with both of them. How can you deal with both of them? So you give them chalitza. It says, there's only one person, one husband involved. Not two. We said, Zuhi, this is the only example that we have where the tzara, where the co-wife is forbidden to marry, and you know why she's forbidden to marry? Only the problem here is your brother's wife. There's no error here. There's no problem of mother, daughter, sister, and all that. That's not a problem here. The problem is that she's Reuben's wife, and you cannot marry Reuben's wife. And why won't you let you marry Reuben's wife? Because partially she's Shimon's wife, and you can't marry two women from one man. So the only Easter involved here is Easter Eishes Ach, a brother-in-law, and it extends to the sister-in-law. That's why the sister-in-law, you give chalitza to the other good woman, and you cannot marry. Zui Tzaras Eishes Ach Ma'av Easter Nefila Gorim. The only thing here is when Reuben passed away, we don't find anywhere else in the Torah that could go in Zois like this example, where the only Easter is your brother's wife, and it extends to your sister-in-law. Now, what do you mean this is the only Easter, as opposed to what? Zuhi lemutamai. What's it coming to exclude? Lav lemuute tzoras islanders. It's coming to exclude. But what about the case of an islandess? If this woman, again, nothing to do with erva, a case of an islandess, and therefore you cannot marry the islandess. Why can't you marry the islandess? Because it's your brother's wife, and yet it's not the same thing. Why? Because it must be that the spouse, that the co-wife is permitted. A question you just said before: the co-wife of an island is forbidden. See, clearly, the co-wife of an island is permitted. The shorter that's permitted, not like you said, Sharia. So he said, no. In the case, you misunderstood. Really, the tzara of an island is forbidden. When it's forbidden, there's no yibum, there's no chalitza, nothing. Because since the island there's an Isser Koresh, your brother's wife, so too is the case of the co-wife. In the case of here, three brothers, that even the co-wife, we're not going to allow her to get married because maybe it's two women of one man, but we're going to make chalitza because Mahatayra, technically, it's two wives or two different husbands. So that's what he meant. This is the only case where there's chalitza, but you can't marry. But in our case of an islandess, there's no chalitza either. He wasn't referring to that. Lo, no, the mutit islandess are sitting. More like this. My love, the mutit, no. It's coming to exclude Tzoras islandess in which way? The asida that's actually forbidden. That is different, at least in the case of three brothers, there's chalitza. In islandess, no chalitza. My Zuhi the Itzan the Friedel Gorlov Tsarasa by chalitza. That this is the only case where at least the co-wife needs a chalitza, can't get married with a chalitza. Islandess, I feel chalitza away. Islandess don't need chalitza. My time and why takanat? In the case of the islandess, Mahat Torah, there's no mitzvah yibum because you can't have children. So then the co-wife has no yibum at all, no yibum chalitza. In the case of the three brothers, Mahat Torah really you should marry both of them. It's only Rabbanan because she's sort of connected to the second husband. So therefore, chalitza is required. So let's look at our Mishnah tonight. We're looking at our Mishnah, Bekulan, and all these cases, our Mishnah, daughter, mother, sister, and all that grandmother. If they died, the erba, the cause of the problem died. I mean, or she gave me an this gash, or she was divorced. Or she named to Islas, or was discovered that she was an islandese, so to say, in Mutaris. Then they're no longer in the picture, as if there's no mitzvah of Yibum, and therefore the co-wife is permitted. It says clearly the co-wife of an islandess is permitted. They were like Kasha. There are two kinds of scenarios with an islandess. One is where you were aware of it, and one is where you weren't. If you were not aware of it, and later on, after got a little bit older, and suddenly you realize that she's an islandess, it's as if the whole thing was a mekach. The whole marriage is based on a fallacy, and you don't even have to give a divorce. The marriage just is annulled, as if it never happened. And then you have a case of islandess where the husband knew from the outset that she is an islandess, and he accepted her. And he said, look, our Mishnah is talking about where the whole thing is a mekach. You didn't realize you're an islandess. Nobody told you. It turned out to be, it was as if you were never married to her. You never married to her. Then the co-wife has the mitzvah of Yibum. I'm talking about Sarah's islandess where you knew all along she was an islandess, and you married her anyway. So there's no mitzvah of Yibum there because she can't have children. So then the co-wife also is can't be involved in the Yibum. And they cannot, I prove it to you. The Tani, it says, Shenimtsu, it was discovered in our Mishnah, as if you never knew. But like Tani Shahoyu it was, Shmam, it's a good proof. So now the Gemara will come up with complete halachas, Rava and Rabbi Yechon. Amar Rava says, I disagree with what we just said a minute ago with Rabasi. He says, I believe that Sarah's islandess, the Sarah of an islandess, is not, the islandess is disqualified from the mitzvah of Yibum, and the Sarah is not pulled by it. It's not like the Erba, where there's an additional Aveira over and above. Here, the islandess is, the very Aveira of the islandess is that she's a brother's wife. So the other co-wife can have the mitzvah of Yibum. I believe Sarah's islandess would tell us, I feel even if you knew from the beginning. I feel it's Sarah's beat the islandess, even if it's the daughter of the islandess. But if it's a tzara of that, it is permitted. It is totally permitted. And that's why, when do we say, even the tzara of a daughter, so now we have an additional aver, it's a daughter, because when do we say that a tzara of a woman is a problem is if the reason why you cannot marry is because of an erva. But over here, by an islandess, the reason why you cannot forget it, but you don't even get to the erva, it's nothing to do with erva. It's because she's not shaykh to the whole mitzvah of Yibum. So therefore, the co-wife doesn't get dragged along. Said the Gemara, the Mishnah says, well, so the Mishnah is clearly it was discovered, as if to say, but if you knew from the outset, then she's forbidden and the co-wife forbidden. The Gemara says, Tani, read it as if it says shehayu, that they were an islandess, not that it was discovered. Even though it says discovered, it means, or actually edited as if it always you knew and you accepted her, and nevertheless the co-wife is permitted. Kiyasa Ravin and he goes further. Not only the question we discussed before, including you said that Tzara Mamenes is the problem because of Gezerah Pita. I'm saying no. The Tzara of a Mamenes, and so the co-wife of an island is. And go back to the previous Gemara, we had all these three questions that we didn't resolve. So you take back your divorced wife after she married somebody else. Her co-wife, and even though we call her, according to keep it tameh, according to the Chachamim, question was, is she tameh not? Kulan mutaris, they're all permitted. Co-wives are permitted because this is not the case of our Mishnah, which is an erva that pulls in the co-wife. These are not ervas. Tana Bibi. The next Gemara is very important when it comes to modern questions about contraceptives and all that. Three women are allowed to use a tampon. According to Rashi, we're talking about during marital relations. All other women is totally forbidden because, and what's the problem? Because you're destroying the semen, you're destroying the seed. And this Isser, even though a woman doesn't have the mitzvah purvu, she also has the Isser of hashchas zera, so she's not allowed to do that. And therefore, only these three cases are allowed to. Only these three cases are allowed to because they're endangering their lives, and no one else is allowed to. That's Rashi's pshat. Rabbeinu Tam disagrees. He holds that before Tashmish, even these three cases are totally forbidden. Because why? And he said the problem is not hashchas zera. Maybe a woman doesn't even have the Isser of hashchas zera. He said the problem is it's not the conventional way of having relations, having something else there impeding the semen flow. So IUD and all those things might be, your diaphragm might be a problem. What do you call it? It's talking about over here after the Tashmish. And in fact, everyone is permitted. After Tashmish, a woman is permitted. Because he holds no Isser Vashchasa Zera, and you had normal Tashmish, so there's no problem. The Gemara's Chiddush is that these women must, it's mandatory for them to do something to take care of themselves. So these 3 women, they can use a tampon. Tana, a young girl, Mubed is a pregnant woman, and a Manika, and a nursing mother. Now, what's the segue of this Gemara here? Because we're focusing on the Mishnah where it says that all the cases of the Mishnah cannot apply to a case of an islandess or a mean. You can't have a situation of a daughter with an islandess, a mother-in-law, because then how do you have a daughter? An islandess, by very definition, means they had no kids. So it can't be. And so too by mean. Because mean is young, when you're young, you're 12 years old, and you don't have any kids. So therefore, it can't be a situation where a daughter and the mother who's mine. That's what the Mishnah says. So now we're going to explore that. Can a woman under 12 years old actually even have children? So Tanya Bibi for Nachman, 3 women, they use a tampon. Tana, youngster, if she's already pregnant, Dominica, if she's nursing. Gemara explains. Tana, youngster, Shema Tisabah. She might fall pregnant with Shema Thomas, and then she might die. So therefore, use a tampon. Muberes, pregnant woman, Shema Tasa Ubra Sandal. The way Rashi learns, which all the Rishonim find difficult. Let's say this woman is pregnant. If she continues having marital relations with her husband, she might become pregnant the second time, and the second child, the second embryo, is going to squish the first one and flatten its face like a sandal or shoe, or sandal like a fish that has no face. Tosfos says impossible to become pregnant the second time if you're already pregnant. And he says it means that she might have twins. And if you keep on, let's say you're a heavy person, you might squish the baby. The third one is Manika, nursing mother. When she becomes pregnant, she loses the milk. And there's no, synthetic milk or anything else was dangerous. Is a Manika, nursing mother, because we want to make sure that she doesn't lose the milk. Because maybe we know for son, the Yevamos, she has not enough milk and the kid will die. Now, the Ezek Tana, what's the definition of a young child? That we say that she can bear children. You're saying it, she could be children and it's dangerous. What age are we talking about? So that window between 11 and 12 years old is the time when she can fall pregnant, but it's very dangerous for her personal welfare and the child's. Under 11, she won't fall pregnant. So there's no reason to have a tampon. The Yesla Kane, and over at 12 years old, she can fall pregnant and she can still remain healthy. She can have normal relations, doesn't need to put on any tampons. These are words of Meir. The Chachamim disagree. They say whether that case, Mishameshes Kedarka, she can continue doing it normally and have normal relations, doesn't need a tampon at all. Hashem will take care of it. It says, she's acting foolishly, but Hashem takes care of the foolish ones. Now, if she has Tashma in a normal way, they will take care of it, because as we'll see, it's not inevitable. Moshe Feinstein uses this, for example, to explain why smokers, he didn't want to put a ban on smoking, because even though they shouldn't smoke, it's unhealthy. But if you do, will you apply the rule of Shem P'sayim Hashem? So the Gemara, the fact he's saying that maybe she'll fall pregnant and maybe she will die. What are you really saying? That there's a chance that she won't die. There's a chance that she'll fall pregnant and give birth to a child. So what is our Mishnah saying? It's impossible to have a case, let's say, of a daughter with a mother who's Mamayan. It's possible that she gave birth at 11 years old before she was Mamayan. And so what's the Mishnah saying? It can't be. It's possible for a girl, 11.5-year-old girl, let's say, fall pregnant, but like May says, she won't die. So in Cain, if so, we find clearly a case where you can have a mother-in-law who was a girl who's Mamayan and no longer related to that man. So, for example, if the mother-in-law was married to Reuven or to Shimon, let's say, and the daughter then married Reuven, and if the mother-in-law then walks out of Shimon, then Shimon was never married to that woman, then Shimon can marry the niece, Reuven's daughter, right? But the Mishnah says it's impossible to happen, because it's impossible for the mother-in-law to be Mamayan after she gave birth to this girl. But Luchayim could. It says right here, sometimes it could happen. But now it's impossible to say that a mother-in-law who turned out to be an islandess, because then she wouldn't have had any children, or that she vetoed her marriage. Says Gemara, you're right. It's impossible. And you know why? Because Ema, you read it wrong. Shema Tisaba, she might fall pregnant. Vit Thomas, as she does, she definitely will die. It's impossible for 11.5-year-old to give birth and to fall pregnant and to give birth. Now what I would look, because Rabbi Levoy said, Gvul Yeshla. There's a window, and it goes as follows. This is the rules. Is before 11 years old, and it's impossible to get pregnant. Between 11 and 12, he may say she can fall pregnant, but she will die, and the Ubra mace. She will die, and her Ubra will also die. So, and once she's 12 years old, she can fall pregnant and give birth, and so too with the Ubra with the child as well. Says the Gemara, okay, so therefore we understand now Mishnah why it's impossible to have a case of Miyun and a daughter involved. Says the Gemara, Aini, but it's not so, because Rabbi Bashmur clearly disagreed. He says, this is what he said, and we're going to infer from that he disagrees with what we just said a minute ago. He says, you cannot say the chamaisa by a mother-in-law, the aim chamaisa and the mother-in-law's mother, the aim chamav or your father's mother, shenimchu islands. That turned out to be that they discovered they were in islands because they wouldn't have had any children. Or they were Mamayin. And why can't they say that? The reason is shekvar yoldu, because they already had a child. And as we'll soon see, if you already had a child, you can no longer be Mamayin. It doesn't say because she's already an adult. You're telling me it's impossible to have a child, a living child, but under the age of 12. So all he had to say was Rabbi Shmuel should have said is it's impossible to have miyun because she's really an adult, and an adult cannot be mamayin anymore because you could have had children before. You can only have children when you're an adult, so you couldn't be mamayin. That's what you say. What do you mean shekvar yoldu? What do you mean she gave birth already? In other words, as if to say she could have given birth at the age of 11.5, but the fact that she gave birth is what prevents her from being mamayin. Whole different story. So what does it mean? No, you're right. Sometimes they can fall pregnant and give birth at the age of 11.5. So if it's possible, so why does the mission say it's impossible to have a case of a daughter and a mother of Mamayan? What do you mean? She could have given birth when she was 11.5. This is problematic. Safra says that if she gave, no, bas mitzvah is not just by years. There's a big argument in Gemara that we had. That bas mitzvah, according to one opinion, is not by years. It's puberty, maturity. So if she reaches maturity, under 12 years old, let's say the age of 11.5, then she's considered an adult. So having children is a sign of puberty, sign of maturity. Therefore, even if she had a child 11.5, so you could have a child, but that means that she's treated as an adult right then and there. And if she's treated like an adult, she couldn't have vetoed the marriage. That's what the Mishnah means. You cannot be mamar. It cannot be a case of mine with a daughter, because even if she gave birth to a daughter 11.5 years old, she could no longer be mamayin because she's treated now as an adult. So, bonim having children is tantamount to a simon, to a sign of puberty and maturity. Says the Islam, another version is bonim adifa v'samayim. In fact, children is even a better sign than have hair growth and so on. Now, what does it mean better? The man of community, better or equal to the difference. Gemara says it follows, because the Chachamim hold if she has 2 hairs, that's a sign of puberty. Rabbi Yehuda says that's not good enough. He holds that there has to be a lot of hair, that whole area, most of the area should be covered with hair. But even Rabbi Yehuda, who insists that most of the area should be covered with hair, but if she gave birth, that in itself is tantamount to having hair there. So there's more black, but bonim, if you have a child, that's already, he can see that's considered a sign of maturity. So what is the Gemara saying over here? A young girl could have a child, but if she had a child, that means she's no longer a young girl. Forget about the passport, the age on the passport. She's considered an adult. She reached maturity. She can no longer veto the marriage or annul the marriage. She can no longer be mamayin. Rabbi Zvid Amar, he gives no answer. He says no. Bonim is not one of the signs that the Gemara gives as a sign of puberty. But if there was bonim, it must be that she had other signs as well, which is the hairs, the 2 hairs, must have had it. You're going to ask, so just check to see whether she has or not. So we're going to say, just because it's not there proves nothing, because maybe she had and it fell out. So the Gemara Avzid says, not that the children themselves is the sign of puberty, but bonim, ain't bonim below samani. The fact that she gave birth must be that she reached puberty, had other signs as well. So the samanim, not the bonim, the samanim that makes you an adult. So Gemara says, Now, there is an opinion that says that if a girl has some money before the age of 12, she's not considered an adult, because we'll say Shuma Balma, it's only a growth. It's not a sign of puberty. But where this Gemara here is following that it is, you don't have to be 12 years old, some money is sufficient. Says the Gemara, if you're guessing, speculating that there's here it's not the bunny, then benivdik. Check it out. So the Gemara Chashin, we're worried, even we look there and there's nothing there, it proves nothing, because we'll say maybe there wasn't, it fell out. Says the Gemara, one second. There's an argument between Rav Papa and Rav Papi, two brothers. What happened? Rav Papi says that it's possible that it was there and it fell out. But Rav Papa says it's impossible. If it's there, if it was there yesterday, it's there today. So according to Rav Papa, check it out. And if there's no hair, then she's not an adult. And she can still walk out of the marriage even though she had a child. So what's the Mishnah say it's impossible? Says, this makes sense according to when it says we're worried that the hair fell out. Papa said that we're not worried the hair fell out. So according to our Papa, let's just check if there's hair. And there's no hair, that means she's not an adult. And if there was hair, she's an adult. Now if there's no hair and yet she gave birth to a child, it's possible to have a case of a daughter with a mother who's Mamayan. Says the Gemara, no. The reason why even Rav Papa, who generally says that the hair doesn't fall out, in this case, he's compelled to say that the hair must have fallen out. Why? Rav Papa generally says that if there was hair before puberty, then it's still there. With so much pain in giving birth, the birth pangs, that caused the hair to fall out. And because that caused it, in case it extends further, even the pregnancy itself, morning sickness, whatever, the pregnancy itself, the pain of the pregnancy might have caused the hair to fall out, the hair follicles to fall out. So even Rav Papa, who generally says once it's there, it doesn't fall out, will agree that maybe it fell out. So what he's saying here, really, the banim itself is not the sign, but the banim tells us that there was the sign and it just disappeared. And therefore, it's impossible for a girl to be mamayan if she gave birth, because as soon as she gave birth, that in itself turns her into an adult. And therefore she cannot be mine. And our Mishnah follows the view that says that simonim is alone is sufficient to treat someone as an adult. Okay, that completes today's Gemara. And I think we should bench Grimel every day when we finish a page.